What would you do if someone told you that you didn't belong somewhere just because of how you look? That you couldn't possibly afford to be there? That people like you should know their place? Well, that's exactly what happened to me on a flight from Miami to New York. A Karen in first class took one look at my jeans and t-shirt and decided I didn't belong. She demanded I be removed from my seat. She questioned how I could afford to be there. She even tried to have me thrown off the plane. But here's what she didn't know. I'm a federal air marshal. And the woman sitting across the aisle in the stunning red dress who came to my defense? She's one of the most ruthless lawyers in New York City. What started as a routine flight turned into a viral moment that made national news, sparked a legal battle, and changed airline policy forever. This is the story of how one entitled passenger learned the hardest lesson of her life. And trust me, by the time this was over, she wished she'd just kept her mouth shut. Welcome to HOA Stories channel, where we bring you real stories of entitled people getting exactly what they deserve. If you love watching Karen's face consequences, smash that subscribe button and hit the notification bell, because you're not going to want to miss what happens next. This story has everything. Drama at 30,000 feet, viral videos, courtroom battles, and justice served ice cold. So buckle up, because Flight 2847 is about to take off. And this Karen is in for the ride of her life. Let's get into it. Have you ever been judged based on how you look? Had someone assumed they knew everything about you just from a glance? Well, that's exactly what happened to me on Flight 2847 from Miami to New York. And the woman who made those assumptions had no idea who she was dealing with. My name is Marcus Chun, and I'm a federal air marshal. I've been doing this job for 8 years now, protecting passengers on commercial flights from threats they'll hopefully never know about. The key to being a good air marshal is blending in, looking like everyone else, acting like a regular passenger. Which is why I was dressed casually that day, wearing jeans, a simple black t-shirt, and sneakers. No suit, no tie, nothing that screamed law enforcement. Just a regular guy heading home after a long week. I'd boarded early, as I always do, and settled into my first-class seat, 2A. Window seat, good vantage point of the cabin, close to the cockpit. Everything by the book. I was reviewing some paperwork on my phone when she boarded. And honestly, I noticed her immediately. Not because of what she was wearing, though that was hard to miss. She was a stunning woman in her early 30s, walking down the aisle like it was a runway. She wore a fitted red dress that hugged every curve, designer heels that clicked with confidence, and her dark hair fell in perfect waves past her shoulders. Her makeup was flawless, bold red lips that matched her dress. She carried a leather handbag that probably cost more than most people's monthly rent. She moved with the kind of confidence that turned heads. And she knew it. She walked past me without a glance and settled into seat 2C, across the aisle. I went back to my phone, mentally noting the other passengers as they boarded. That's when Karen made her entrance. She was probably in her late 50s, wearing what I can only describe as expensive but tasteless. A beige pantsuit that screamed, "I want to speak to your manager." Pearls that looked real but somehow cheap on her, and that haircut. You know the one. She had 2 large carry-on bags, both clearly over the size limit, and she was struggling to lift them into the overhead bin. The flight attendant, a young woman named Jessica according to her name tag, rushed over to help. "Ma'am, I'm afraid those bags are too large for the overhead compartment," Jessica said politely. "We'll need to gate check them." "Absolutely not," Karen said, her voice sharp and loud enough that several passengers looked over. "I paid for first class, and I'm keeping my bags with me." "I understand, ma'am, but FAA regulations." "I don't care about regulations," Karen interrupted. "Do you know who I am? I fly this route twice a month. I know the rules, and I know my rights." Jessica's smile never wavered, but I could see the tension in her shoulders. "I apologize for the inconvenience, ma'am, but for safety reasons." "Fine," Karen snapped, shoving one bag at Jessica. "But if anything is damaged, I'll be filing a complaint. I'll have your job for this." Jessica took the bag with grace I had to admire and disappeared toward the front of the plane. Karen huffed and settled into seat 2B, right between me and the woman in red. Perfect, I thought sarcastically. The woman in red, who I hadn't heard speak yet, was scrolling through her phone, completely unbothered by the commotion. She had put on oversized sunglasses even though we were inside the plane, and she exuded an air of, I'm too fabulous to be bothered by this. Karen, still fuming from her baggage confrontation, looked around the first-class cabin like she was inspecting it for violations. Her eyes landed on me, and I saw her expression shift. Suspicion, disapproval, judgment. Excuse me, she said, leaning toward me. I think there's been a mistake. I looked up from my phone. I'm sorry, I said politely. This is first class, she said, as if I didn't know. Are you sure you're in the right seat? I felt my jaw tighten, but I kept my expression neutral. Yes, ma'am, I said. Seat 2A. That's my seat. She looked me up and down, taking in my casual clothes, my sneakers, my lack of a fancy watch or designer anything. Well, it's just unusual to see people like you in first class, she said, and the way she emphasized people like you made my blood boil. But I'm a professional. I deal with much worse than entitled passengers on a regular basis. I have a ticket for this seat, I said calmly. Is there something else I can help you with? The woman in red lowered her sunglasses slightly, glancing over at Karen with what I could only describe as amused interest. I'm just saying, Karen continued, apparently not done. First class is meant for business travelers, professionals, people who can actually afford to be here, not people who probably use their entire paycheck on an upgrade. The woman in red let out a small laugh, quickly covering it with a cough. I took a deep breath. Ma'am, I'm in my assigned seat. If you have a problem with that, you're welcome to speak to the flight attendants. Oh, I will, Karen said, already pressing the call button. Jessica returned almost immediately, her professional smile still in place despite what had to be exhaustion at dealing with Karen already. How can I help you, ma'am? Jessica asked. Karen gestured at me like I was a piece of furniture in the wrong place. I think there's been a seating error, Karen said. This passenger is in first class, and I don't think he actually has a first-class ticket. Jessica glanced at me, and I saw recognition flicker in her eyes. Air marshals coordinate with the flight crew before boarding. She knew exactly who I was. Sir, may I see your boarding pass? Jessica asked, playing along. I handed it to her. She examined it carefully, then smiled at Karen. Everything is in order, ma'am. This passenger is seated correctly. But how did he afford first class? Karen pressed. The woman in red actually laughed out loud at that. Honey, she said, her voice smooth and confident with just a hint of an accent I couldn't quite place. Maybe he can afford it because he doesn't waste money on ugly pantsuits. Karen's face turned an impressive shade of red. Excuse me? She sputtered. The woman in red pushed her sunglasses up into her hair, revealing striking green eyes lined with perfect cat eye makeup. You heard me, she said. You've been rude and obnoxious since you stepped on this plane. Maybe focus on your own business and less on judging people who've done nothing to you. I am a platinum frequent flyer, Karen said, her voice rising. I have spent hundreds of thousands of dollars with this airline. You can't speak to me that way. I can speak however I want, the woman in red said, examining her perfectly manicured nails. Freedom of speech. Look it up. Jessica looked increasingly uncomfortable. Ladies, gentlemen, let's all just settle down, she said. We'll be taking off soon. I want her moved to economy, Karen said, pointing at the woman in red. And I want him verified. I don't believe he actually belongs in first class. Ma'am, both of these passengers have valid first-class tickets, Jessica said firmly. I can't move anyone unless they've violated airline policy. Then I'm filing a complaint, Karen said, about both of them, and about you for not doing your job properly. Jessica took a breath. That's your right, ma'am. Now if you'll excuse me, I need to prepare for departure. She walked away, and I could see the stress in every step. Karen sat back in her seat, arms crossed, radiating indignation. The woman in red caught my eye and winked. Actually winked. Then she turned to Karen. You know what your problem is? She said. You think your money makes you better than everyone else. You think because you can afford first class, you own the space. But respect isn't bought with airline points, sweetheart. It's earned. I don't have to listen to this, Karen said. No, you don't, the woman agreed. You could just sit there quietly and mind your business. But something tells me that's not really your style. I bit back a smile. This woman was fearless. And watching her take Karen down verbally was honestly the most entertainment I'd had on a flight in months. The plane began to taxi, and the flight attendants went through their safety demonstration. Karen sat in angry silence, occasionally shooting glares at both me and the woman in red. The woman in red, for her part, seemed completely unbothered. She pulled out a tablet and started reading something, occasionally sipping from a glass of champagne the flight attendant had brought her. As we took off, I settled in for what I thought would be a routine flight. But about 30 minutes into the flight, once we'd reached cruising altitude, things started to get interesting. Karen had been on her phone, typing furiously, probably composing her complaint email. Then she made a call. Yes, I need to speak to someone about a flight incident, she said loudly enough for half the cabin to hear. I'm being harassed by other passengers, and the crew is doing nothing about it. The woman in red didn't even look up from her tablet. But I saw her smile slightly. Karen continued her call, embellishing the story with impressive creativity. According to her version, the woman in red had been verbally abusive and threatening. I had apparently tried to take her seat, and the flight attendants were incompetent and rude. None of it was true, of course, but Karen was building a narrative, and she was doing it loudly enough that several passengers were getting uncomfortable. That's when the woman in red set down her tablet. She turned to Karen with a smile that was all teeth and no warmth. Are you done? She asked. I'm reporting dangerous passengers, Karen said, which is my duty as a concerned citizen. Dangerous? The woman in red laughed. Honey, the only dangerous thing here is your fashion sense. Karen's face turned purple. How dare you, she said. Do you know who I am? No, the woman in red said. And I don't care. I'm Linda Whitmore, Karen said, as if that meant something. I sit on the board of 3 charities. My husband is a partner at one of the largest law firms in New York. I have connections. Congratulations, the woman in red said dryly. Want a cookie? Couldn't help it. I laughed. It was just a short laugh, quickly suppressed, but it was enough. Linda turned her fury on me. You think this is funny? She demanded. Ma'am, I think you should lower your voice, I said calmly. You're disturbing the other passengers. I'll raise my voice if I want to, Linda said. And I want to know what you're really doing in first class. Who are you? What do you do for a living? This was getting out of hand. I could tell the flight attendants were watching nervously. Any situation that escalates on a plane becomes a security concern. And while I was equipped to handle it, I preferred situations that didn't escalate. Ma'am, my occupation is none of your business, I said firmly. It is my business when people who clearly can't afford first class are taking up space that should go to real professionals, Linda said. The woman in red set down her champagne glass with a sharp clink. Okay, that's it, she said, standing up. She was tall in those heels, and she looked down at Linda with an expression of pure disdain. I have been patient with you, she said, her voice low and dangerous. I have ignored your rudeness, your prejudice, your complete lack of basic human decency. But I'm done now. Linda stood up too, though she was considerably shorter. Don't you threaten me, she said. I'm not threatening you, the woman in red said. I'm educating you. You see this man you've been harassing? She gestured at me. You have no idea who he is or what he does. You've judged him entirely on his appearance. And you know what that makes you? Small, narrow-minded, and honestly, just sad. I know exactly what he is, Linda said. Someone who scraped together enough money for a ticket and thinks that makes him belong with the rest of us. That's when I stood up. I'd had enough. Ma'am, I said, my voice carrying authority now. I'm going to ask you one more time to sit down and lower your voice. Or what? Linda challenged. You'll do what? You're nobody. I pulled out my badge. Federal Air Marshal. Linda's face went from red to white in about 2 seconds. The woman in red's eyebrows shot up, and she let out a low whistle. Well, she said, sitting back down. That's interesting. Linda stood there, opening and closing her mouth like a fish. You're lying, she finally said. That badge could be fake. Jessica appeared at my side. Is everything all right, sir? She asked, emphasizing the sir just enough. Everything's fine, I said. Just a misunderstanding. But Linda wasn't done. Not even close. I don't believe you, she said, her voice shrill. You're just trying to intimidate me. Real air marshals don't dress like that. The woman in red laughed again. A genuine belly laugh this time. Oh, honey, she said. You really don't know when to quit, do you? Linda turned on her. And you, she said, dressed like some kind of what? The woman challenged. Go ahead. Say what you're thinking. The tension in the cabin was thick enough to cut. Other first-class passengers were watching now, some with phones out. And that's when Linda made her biggest mistake. She reached for my badge. But what happened next would change everything about this flight. Linda's hand reached toward my badge, and I moved faster than she expected. I grabbed her wrist firmly but not painfully, stopping her hand inches from my chest. Ma'am, I said, my voice cold and professional now. Do not touch a federal officer or their credentials. That's a crime. Linda yanked her hand back like she'd been burned. You're hurting me, she screamed, even though I'd barely touched her. Everyone saw that. He assaulted me. The woman in red stood up again, pulling out her phone. Actually, she said, holding up the device, I've been recording for the last 5 minutes, and what everyone will see is you attempting to grab a federal officer's badge after harassing him and me for half an hour. Linda's face went from white to red again. You can't record me without my permission, she shrieked. Actually, I can, the woman in red said calmly. We're in a public space, technically federal airspace, and you have no expectation of privacy. I'm a lawyer, sweetheart. I know exactly what I can and cannot do. A lawyer. Of course she was. That explained the confidence. Linda looked around wildly, as if searching for allies, but every passenger in first class was either avoiding eye contact or openly staring at her with disapproval. This is discrimination, Linda said, her voice desperate now. You're all discriminating against me because I'm standing up for what's right. What's right? The woman in red repeated incredulously. You've been racist, classist, and abusive since you boarded this plane. That's not standing up for anything except your own inflated ego. I am not racist, Linda protested. I never said anything about race. People like you, I quoted back to her. You said people like me shouldn't be in first class. What exactly did you mean by that? Linda's mouth opened and closed. I meant people who dress casually, she stammered. People who don't respect the space. Sure you did, the woman in red said, her voice dripping with sarcasm. That's why you specifically questioned whether he could afford to be here. Nothing to do with assumptions at all. The captain's voice came over the intercom. Ladies and gentlemen, we're experiencing some minor turbulence. Please return to your seats and fasten your seatbelts. Perfect timing. Jessica appeared again, looking stressed but determined. Ma'am, she said to Linda, I need you to return to your seat and fasten your seatbelt. Now. I want to speak to the captain, Linda demanded. The captain is busy flying the plane, Jessica said. But I assure you, he's been made aware of the situation. Good, Linda said, apparently thinking this was a victory. Because I'm filing a formal complaint about this so-called air marshal and this woman who's been harassing me. The woman in red let out an exasperated laugh. Unbelievable, she muttered, sitting back down. The audacity is actually impressive. We all returned to our seats as the plane shook slightly from turbulence. Linda sat rigidly, her phone in her hand, typing furiously. I could see her screen from my angle. She was posting on social media. Being attacked on a flight by an alleged air marshal and another passenger. Terrified for my safety. This airline does nothing to protect decent passengers from thugs. The woman in red leaned over slightly and whispered to me. She's going to regret putting this on social media, she said quietly. Why's that? I whispered back. She smiled. A predatory expression that made me suddenly feel sorry for Linda. Because I'm very good at what I do, she said. And I don't like bullies. The turbulence passed, and Jessica made an announcement that we could move about the cabin again. Linda immediately unbuckled and stood up. I need to use the restroom, she announced to no one in particular. She walked toward the front of the plane with her chin up, trying to maintain some dignity. The moment she disappeared into the lavatory, the woman in red turned to me. So, Air Marshal, she said, extending her hand.
I'm Vanessa Rodriguez.
Corporate attorney, specifically employment and discrimination law. I shook her hand. Marcus Chin, I said. And you probably already figured out what I do. The badge was a pretty good clue, Vanessa said with a grin. How long have you been dealing with passengers like that? 8 years, I said, though most of them aren't quite that persistent. She's special, Vanessa agreed. In the worst possible way. Jessica came over, looking relieved that Linda was temporarily gone. I am so sorry about this, she said quietly. We've had issues with her before, but never this bad. She's a regular? I asked. Unfortunately, Jessica said. Usually she just complains about service or other passengers quietly. This is the first time she's caused this much of a scene. Well, she picked the wrong people to mess with this time, Vanessa said. I'm going to make sure her little social media post backfires spectacularly. How? I asked, curious despite myself. Vanessa pulled up her phone and showed me her screen. She had thousands of followers on multiple platforms. I have a pretty substantial online presence, she explained. I post about legal issues, workplace discrimination, that kind of thing. My followers love when I call out bad behavior. She was already drafting a post, complete with the video she'd taken. Watched a woman spend 30 minutes harassing a federal air marshal and a fellow passenger in first class today. Her crime? Judging people based on their appearance. His crime? Existing while not meeting her standards of what first-class passengers should look like. Stay tuned for the full video. That's going to explode, I said. That's the idea, Vanessa replied. People like her need to understand that their behavior has consequences. Linda emerged from the lavatory, and I noticed she'd reapplied her lipstick and fixed her hair. She was preparing for battle. She walked back to her seat with exaggerated confidence, sat down, and immediately called a flight attendant. A different one this time, a male attendant named David. Yes, ma'am? He asked politely. I want to speak to whoever is in charge, Linda said. I've been assaulted and harassed on this flight, and I demand action be taken. David glanced at Jessica, who gave him a small nod. Ma'am, the captain has been informed of the situation, David said, and I believe law enforcement will be meeting the aircraft when we land. Linda's confident expression faltered. Law enforcement? Why would law enforcement need to be involved? I'm the victim here. Ma'am, when there's any kind of altercation on a flight, especially one involving a federal officer, it's standard procedure, David explained. This is outrageous, Linda said, but I could hear the uncertainty in her voice now. She was starting to realize that this wasn't going the way she'd planned. Vanessa was typing on her phone, occasionally glancing at Linda with an amused expression. Your post is already getting traction, she said to Linda sweetly, though I don't think in the way you expected. Linda looked at her phone, and I saw her face drain of color. Vanessa had already posted her video, and it was going viral. Comments were flooding in, and from what I could see on Linda's face as she read her own notifications, people were not taking her side. You can't do this, Linda said, her voice shaking. This is defamation. I'll sue you. Go ahead, Vanessa said calmly. Truth is an absolute defense against defamation. Everything in that video is exactly what happened. And I have a whole firm full of lawyers who would love to take that case pro bono just for the publicity. Linda looked around desperately, as if hoping someone would come to her defense. But the other first-class passengers were actively avoiding her gaze. One older gentleman even gave me a subtle thumbs up. "This isn't fair," Linda said. And for the first time, she sounded less angry and more scared. "I just wanted to fly in peace." "Then you should have let everyone else do the same," I said. The rest of the flight was tense but quiet. Linda stayed in her seat, occasionally checking her phone and making small distressed noises. Vanessa worked on her tablet, occasionally showing me particularly brutal comments on Linda's social media post. "Someone found her LinkedIn," Vanessa whispered to me, "and tagged her employer." "That's harsh," I said, though I didn't exactly feel sorry for Linda. "Actions have consequences," Vanessa said. "She tried to shame you publicly. She called you a thug on social media. She could have seriously damaged your reputation if anyone had believed her." She had a point. About an hour before landing, the captain made an announcement. "Ladies and gentlemen, we'll be landing in New York in approximately 1 hour. I want to thank you for your patience during today's flight. As a reminder, please remain in your seats until we've reached the gate and the seatbelt sign has been turned off." Linda sat up straighter, as if preparing herself. Jessica approached our row again. "Sir," she said to me, "the captain has requested that you come to the cockpit for a brief conversation before landing." I nodded and followed her to the front of the plane. She knocked on the cockpit door in a specific pattern, and it opened. Captain Williams was a gray-haired man in his 50s with a no-nonsense expression. "Agent Chun," he said, shaking my hand. "Hell of a flight you've been having." "Not my favorite," I admitted. "I've been in contact with airport security," he said. "They'll be meeting us at the gate. We'll deplane the other passengers first, then deal with Mrs. Whitmore." "Has she committed a crime?" I asked. "Possibly," the captain said. "Interfering with a flight crew, creating a disturbance on an aircraft, and attempting to grab your badge could be construed as several violations. But that's for the Port Authority to determine." "And the other passenger, Ms. Rodriguez?" I asked. "No issues there," the captain said. "She actually helped defuse the situation. We appreciate her assistance." I returned to my seat. Vanessa looked at me with raised eyebrows. "Everything okay?" she asked. "Airport security is meeting us at the gate," I said quietly. "For Linda?" Vanessa asked. I nodded. "Good," Vanessa said firmly. "She needs to understand that you can't act like that on a plane." Linda had apparently overheard because she made a small whimpering sound. "This is a nightmare," she muttered. "This is all a nightmare." "A nightmare of your own making," Vanessa said without looking up from her tablet. The plane began its descent, and the flight attendants prepared the cabin for landing. As we got closer to the ground, I could see Linda's anxiety increasing. She was gripping the armrests so tightly her knuckles were white. Part of me almost felt bad for her. Almost. But then I remembered her initial comments, her assumptions, her complete lack of respect for anyone she deemed beneath her. She'd brought this on herself. We landed smoothly, and the plane taxied to the gate. The captain's voice came over the intercom one more time. "Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to New York. Please remain seated until the seatbelt sign has been turned off. Thank you for flying with us today." But before he turned off the seatbelt sign, he added something unusual. "We ask that all passengers except those in seats 2A, 2B, and 2C please deplane first. Thank you for your cooperation." The other passengers began gathering their belongings and filing out. Several of them glanced at our row with curious or sympathetic expressions. One woman leaned down as she passed. "You handled that with a lot more grace than I would have," she whispered to me. Once the cabin was empty except for the three of us and the flight crew, 2 Port Authority police officers boarded the plane. They walked directly to our row. "Agent Chun?" one of them asked. "That's me," I said, showing my credentials again. "We understand there was an incident during the flight," the officer said. We're going to need statements from everyone involved. Linda stood up quickly. Finally, she said, someone who will listen to reason. These two have been harassing me for the entire flight. I want them arrested. The officers looked at each other, then at Linda. Ma'am, we're here because the captain reported that you created a disturbance and interfered with a federal officer. One of them said. That's not true. Linda protested. I'm the victim here. Vanessa held up her phone. I have video evidence of the entire interaction, she said. Would you like to see it? The officers nodded, and Vanessa played the video. Even edited down to the key moments, it was damning. Linda's assumptions, her attempts to have me removed from my seat, her reaching for my badge, all of it captured in clear high-definition video. When the video ended, the officers turned to Linda. Ma'am, we're going to need you to come with us, one of them said. For what? Linda demanded, her voice rising to a shriek. I haven't done anything wrong. Ma'am, you're being detained for questioning regarding interference with a flight crew and assault on a federal officer, the officer said. Assault? Linda's voice went up another octave. I didn't assault anyone. You attempted to grab his badge, ma'am, the officer said patiently. That's physical contact with a federal officer. That can be considered assault. This is insane, Linda said, but she was crying now. I just wanted to fly home. I just wanted a peaceful flight. Then you shouldn't have spent the entire flight harassing other passengers, Vanessa said coldly. The officers escorted Linda off the plane, and I could hear her protests echoing down the jetway. Vanessa and I gathered our belongings and followed at a distance. Well, Vanessa said, that was quite a flight. You can say that again, I replied. Want to grab a coffee in the airport? She asked. I have a feeling we're both going to be giving statements for a while. Sure, I said. We walked together through the terminal, and I couldn't help but notice the looks we got. Vanessa in her stunning red dress and heels, me in my jeans and t-shirt. We must have looked like an odd pair, but after what we'd just been through together, I felt like we'd earned a strange kind of camaraderie. You know, Vanessa said as we walked, I deal with people like Linda all the time in my work. Discrimination cases, harassment cases. But it never stops being shocking when you see it so blatantly. I see it more than I'd like, I admitted. People make assumptions. Usually they just whisper or stare. Linda was just more vocal about it. Well, she's going to regret that now, Vanessa said. We found a coffee shop and sat down. Vanessa checked her phone and let out a low whistle. My video has over 2 million views already, she said. And Linda's employers have released a statement saying they're investigating the matter. That was fast, I said. The internet moves quickly when there's justice to be served, Vanessa said with satisfaction. A Port Authority officer approached our table. Agent Chun, Ms. Rodriguez, he said. When you're ready, we'll need those statements. Of course, I said. But as we stood to follow him, my phone buzzed with an alert. A security notification from the airline. There was a credible threat on another flight, and they needed an air marshal on board immediately. I have to go, I said to Vanessa. Duty calls. She smiled. Of course you do. Go be a hero. But as I started to walk away, she called after me. Hey, Marcus. I turned back. Next time you're in New York and not saving the world, look me up, she said, handing me a business card. I owe you a drink for the entertainment today. I took the card and smiled. Deal. As I hurried toward the security office, I had no idea that the situation with Linda was far from over, and what happened next would turn everything into something much bigger than just one entitled passenger on one flight. 3 weeks later, I was back in New York for a layover between assignments. I'd been thinking about calling Vanessa, but work had been intense. Back-to-back flights, heightened security protocols, the usual chaos that comes with keeping people safe at 30,000 feet. But Linda's situation had taken on a life of its own. The video had gone beyond viral. News outlets picked it up. Talk shows discussed it. It became a case study in privilege, discrimination, and the consequences of public behavior. Linda's employer, a prestigious marketing firm, had placed her on immediate leave. The board of directors for the charities she'd mentioned removed her from their positions. Her husband's law firm issued a statement distancing themselves from her behavior. Everything she'd built her identity around was crumbling. And honestly, I felt a strange mix of satisfaction and discomfort about it. Yes, she'd been awful. But watching someone's life implode, even someone who brought it on themselves, wasn't as satisfying as I'd expected. My phone rang as I was walking through LaGuardia. Unknown number. Agent Chen, I answered. Marcus, it's Vanessa Rodriguez. I smiled despite myself. How'd you get my number? I asked. I'm a very good lawyer, she said, and I could hear the smile in her voice. Are you in New York? Just landed, I said. How did you? I have my ways, she interrupted. Look, I need to talk to you about something. Can you meet me at the coffee shop where we gave our statements? Say in an hour. This sounds serious, I said. It is, she replied. Trust me, you'll want to hear this. An hour later, I walked into the coffee shop. Vanessa was already there, wearing a sleek black pantsuit this time, her hair pulled back in a professional ponytail. Still stunning, but in a completely different way than on the plane. She waved me over, and I noticed she had a folder on the table. Thanks for coming, she said as I sat down. I ordered you a black coffee. That seems like an Air Marshal kind of drink. Close enough, I said, taking a sip. What's going on? She slid the folder across the table. Linda Whitmore filed a lawsuit, she said. Against you, me, the airline, and about 6 other people. I opened the folder and started reading. Defamation, emotional distress, loss of income, invasion of privacy, the list went on. She's suing for $5 million, Vanessa said. Split between all the defendants. This is ridiculous, I said, reading through the claims. Everything that happened was documented. She brought this on herself. Exactly, Vanessa said, which is why I wanted to talk to you. Her lawyer is a joke, and this case has no merit. But it's going to be expensive and time-consuming to defend if we let it go to court. So what do you propose? I asked. I want to countersue, Vanessa said, her eyes lighting up, for harassment, defamation, and abuse of legal process. And I want to use this case to set a precedent about accountability for discriminatory behavior. That sounds like a lot, I said. It is, Vanessa agreed. But here's the thing, Marcus. People like Linda do this kind of thing all the time. They make assumptions, they harass people, and when they face consequences, they play the victim and sue. It's a pattern. She pulled out her tablet and showed me dozens of similar cases. People who'd been caught on video being racist, discriminatory, or abusive, who then sued the people who called them out. Most of these cases get settled quietly, Vanessa said, because defendants don't want the hassle or the cost. But that just enables more of this behavior. And you want to fight it, I said. I want to destroy it, Vanessa corrected. I want to make an example of this case so that the next Linda Whitmore thinks twice before harassing someone on a plane. I sat back, considering. What would you need from me? I asked. Testimony, character witness statements, and permission to use your story as part of the countersuit, Vanessa said. I'll handle everything else. My firm is taking this pro bono because we believe in the principle. When's the court date? I asked. 3 months, she said. Plenty of time to prepare. I looked at the lawsuit again, at Linda's ridiculous claims, at her attempt to paint herself as the victim. I'm in, I said. Vanessa's smile was fierce and beautiful. Good, she said, because we're going to win this. The next 3 months were a whirlwind. Depositions, document reviews, media interviews. The case became national news. Legal experts weighed in on talk shows. Social media was split between people who thought Linda deserved another chance and people who thought she should face full consequences. But as we got closer to the court date, something unexpected happened. Linda's lawyer reached out to Vanessa with a settlement offer. Linda would drop her lawsuit if we agreed not to countersue and signed a non-disclosure agreement. Vanessa called me immediately. What do you think? She asked. I think she's scared, I said. She knows she can't win. Agreed, Vanessa said. But here's my question. Do we take the easy win? Or do we go to court and potentially set legal precedent? I thought about it for a long moment. We go to court, I said finally. This isn't just about Linda anymore. It's about everyone who's been harassed, discriminated against, or judged unfairly. They deserve to see justice done publicly. I was hoping you'd say that, Vanessa said. Let's do this. The trial lasted 3 days. Linda's lawyer argued that she'd been having a stressful day, that her comments were taken out of context, that the video had been edited to make her look worse. But Vanessa was brilliant. She presented the full, unedited footage. She brought in other passengers from the flight who testified about Linda's behavior. She showed Linda's social media history, full of similar complaints and judgmental posts about people who don't belong in various spaces. She painted a picture of someone with a consistent pattern of discriminatory behavior, not someone having one bad day. The jury deliberated for 6 hours. When they came back, the verdict was unanimous. Linda's lawsuit was dismissed with prejudice. Our countersuit was upheld. Linda was ordered to pay damages, court costs, and issue a public apology. But more importantly, the judge included a written opinion about accountability in the age of social media and the consequences of discriminatory behavior on commercial flights. It would be cited in future cases. It would be taught in law schools. It was exactly what Vanessa had hoped for. As we left the courthouse, reporters swarmed us with questions. Vanessa handled them like a pro, talking about justice, accountability, and the importance of treating everyone with respect. I stood beside her, in my suit this time, feeling proud of what we'd accomplished. When the reporters finally dispersed, Vanessa turned to me. "We did it," she said, her eyes shining. "You did it," I corrected. "I just showed up and told the truth." "That's exactly what heroes do," she said. We walked to a nearby bar that had become our regular meeting spot during the trial. "So what happens to Linda now?" I asked as we sat down with our drinks. "She has to pay the damages, issue the apology, and hopefully learn from this experience," Vanessa said. "Whether she actually learns anything, that's up to her." "Do you think she will?" I asked. Vanessa considered it. "Honestly, maybe. Sometimes it takes losing everything to realize you were wrong. Or maybe she'll just become more bitter. Either way, she won't be harassing people on planes anymore without thinking about the consequences." We clinked our glasses together. "To justice," Vanessa said. "To holding people accountable," I added. 6 months after the trial, I was on another flight, back in first class, back in my casual clothes. A woman boarded and paused when she saw me. I recognized that look, that moment of judgment. But then she caught herself, smiled politely, and took her seat without comment. Progress. Small but real. My phone buzzed with a text from Vanessa. "Saw another viral video of airline discrimination today. Already reached out to the victim. This is becoming my specialty. Thanks for starting this journey with me." I smiled and typed back. "Anytime. Someone's got to keep the Lindas of the world in check." "That's what heroes do," she replied, echoing her words from the courthouse. As the plane took off, I looked around the first-class cabin. People of all backgrounds, all appearances, all walks of life, sitting together in shared space. Some in suits, some in jeans. Some with designer bags, some with backpacks. And nobody questioning whether anyone else belonged there. That's how it should be. That's what we'd fought for. Not just the right to sit in a seat we'd paid for, but the right to exist in spaces without being judged, questioned, or harassed. Linda Whitmore had tried to put me in what she thought was my place. Instead, she'd helped spark a movement about respect, dignity, and accountability. I'd like to think she learned something from it. But even if she didn't, thousands of other people did. And that made every moment of the fight worthwhile. Sometimes the best revenge isn't revenge at all. It's justice. Real, meaningful, precedent-setting justice. The kind that changes things for everyone who comes after. As the flight attendant came by with drinks, she smiled warmly at everyone, treating each passenger with equal respect and dignity, exactly as it should be. I settled back in my seat, comfortable in my jeans and t-shirt, knowing I'd earned my place here not through appearance or status, but through character and courage. And that's something no Karen could ever take away. And that's how one Karen's judgment at 30,000 feet turned into a legal precedent that changed everything. Linda thought she could bully a federal officer out of his seat. She thought her status and her attitude would be enough to get her way. But she learned the hard way that respect isn't about what you wear or how much money you have. It's about how you treat other people. Marcus didn't just win his seat back. He won justice for everyone who's ever been told they don't belong somewhere. And Vanessa didn't just defend a client. She set a legal precedent that's still being cited in courtrooms today. Sometimes karma doesn't just catch up with you. Sometimes it takes you to court, costs you everything, and teaches you a lesson you'll never forget. So the next time you think about judging someone based on their appearance, remember Linda. Remember that the person you're dismissing might be someone who can fight back. And remember that in the age of smartphones and social media, your worst moment can become the world's entertainment. If the story gave you that sweet taste of justice, make sure you hit that like button and subscribe to HOA Stories channel for more incredible tales of entitled people getting exactly what they deserve. Drop a comment below and tell me, have you ever been judged unfairly because of how you looked? Or better yet, have you ever witnessed a Karen get put in their place? I read every single comment, and I love hearing your stories. And if you want to see more stories about people standing up to bullies, hitting that notification bell so you never miss an upload. We've got HOA nightmares, entitled neighbors, workplace Karens, and so much more coming your way. Remember, you don't have to be loud to be powerful. You just have to stand your ground and know your worth. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next story. Stay strong, stay confident, and never let anyone tell you where you don't belong. This is HOA Stories channel signing off.